You ruined our lives, just leave. Stop for a second, close your eyes and imagine hearing those words. Not from a stranger. Not from someone who hates you, but from your own child. The one you carried, protected, sacrificed everything for. Now imagine standing there, frozen, heart pounding, trying to understand what just happened, because that's exactly where I was. And what I'm about to share with you is not just a story, that it's a reality that most people are silently living, but are too afraid to talk about. So don't skip this. Don't scroll, because this might be the story that changes how you see your life. That moment didn't just hurt me. It broke something deep inside me. But here's the truth no one tells you. Sometimes the moment that breaks you is the exact moment that begins to rebuild you. I remember looking at my son, searching his face for some kind of regret, some softness, some sign that he didn't mean it, but there was nothing, just anger, frustration, distance. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just a random outburst. This had been building for a long time, silently, slowly, right in front of me, and I didn't even realize it. Tell me honestly, how many times have you ignored the signs in your own life? How many times have you felt something was wrong, but convinced yourself everything was fine, because facing the truth is harder than living in denial? I stood there, with 1,000 thoughts racing in my mind. Should I argue? Should I defend myself? Should I remind him of everything I've done? The sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the love that never stopped. But then something inside me said, stop. Because sometimes, explaining yourself to someone who has already made up their mind only breaks you more. So I did something unexpected. Something even I didn't think I had the strength to do it. I stayed quiet and I picked up my bag, and I walked out. No shouting, no drama, no final speech. Just silence. And let me tell you, that silence was louder than anything I could have said. As I stepped outside, the door closed behind me. And with it, closed a chapter of my life I thought would never end. I didn't know where I was going, that I didn't have a plan, that I didn't even have clarity. All I had was pain, confusion, and a strange feeling of emptiness. I got into my car, sat there, hands on the steering wheel, but I didn't drive. I couldn't, because in that moment, I wasn't just lost on the road, that I was lost in life. Tears started falling, not loud, not dramatic, just silent, heavy tears. The kind that come from a place so deep, you can't even explain it. And I asked myself something I had never asked before. When did everything change? When did love turn into blame? When did I become the problem in my own child's eyes? And the hardest question of all, did I lose them, or did I lose myself first? You see, most people think heartbreak only happens in relationships, but that's not true. Some of the deepest heartbreaks happen inside families, between parents and children, between people who love each other, but no longer understand each other. And that kind of pain, it doesn't just hurt your heart, it shakes your identity. Because when you've spent your whole life being the strong one, the giver, support system, you don't know who you are without that role. That night, I didn't go anywhere special, no hotel, no friend's house, just a quiet corner where I could sit and think. And for the first time in years, there was no one asking me for anything, no responsibilities, no expectations, no noise. Just me. And that silence, it was terrifying. Because when you're alone like that, you can't escape yourself. You can't distract your mind. You can't hide behind responsibilities. You're forced to face everything. Every emotion. Every regret. Every truth you've been avoiding. And that's when I realized something that changed everything, that I wasn't just hurt because of what my son said, that I was hurt because, deep down, I knew something wasn't right for a long time. I had been giving until there was almost nothing left of me. My time, my energy, my peace, my identity. All given away in the name of love. But here's the truth that hit me that night: love should not cost you yourself. Let that sink in. Because many people will never understand this. They will keep giving, keep sacrificing, keep losing themselves, thinking that one day it will be appreciated. But what if it isn't? What if you wake up one day and realize that you gave everything and still ended up empty? That realization, it's painful, but it's also powerful because it wakes you up. I sat there for hours, thinking, remembering, feeling everything I had suppressed for years. The times I said yes when I wanted to say no. The times I stayed quiet just to avoid conflict. The times I ignored my own feelings just to keep others happy. And slowly I started seeing the truth, not the story I told others, not the image I tried to maintain, but the real truth. I had built my life around being needed, around being everything for everyone. And in the process, I forgot to be something for myself. Tell me honestly, have you ever felt like that, like your whole identity is tied to what you do for others, like if you stop giving, you lose your value? If yes, then you understand exactly what I felt that night. Because the pain wasn't just about being told to leave, the pain was realizing that I didn't even know where I belonged anymore. But here's where everything starts to change. Not immediately, not magically, but slowly, quietly, powerfully. Because sometimes life has to break your routine to break your illusion. Sometimes you have to lose everything you depended on to discover what truly matters. And sometimes the moment you feel the most lost is actually the moment you begin to find yourself. That night in Florida wasn't just the night I left my home. It was the night I met myself, for the first time, without roles, without expectations, without pressure. Just me, raw, broken, but real. And if you're still listening right now, if something in this story feels familiar, then I want you to stay, because what comes next is not just about pain, that it's about transformation. Backhand index pointing right. Before we continue, take a second to like this video and subscribe, because this journey might be exactly what your heart needs right now. And trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next, because the hardest part was just the beginning. The first night, I didn't sleep. Not because I couldn't, but because my mind refused to be quiet. Every word, every moment, every memory kept replaying again and again. You ruined our lives? That sentence didn't just echo in my ears, it settled in my chest. Heavy, uncomfortable, unshakable. I kept asking myself, was it really that bad? Did I miss something? Did I push too hard or not enough? And the worst part? There were no answers, just silence. And let me tell you something most people don't talk about. Silence can be louder than pain, because pain screams, but silence, it whispers doubts into your mind, slowly, constantly, until you start believing things that were never true. The next morning, I woke up in my CR.my neck stiff, my eyes swollen, my heart still heavy. And for a moment, I forgot what happened. But then reality hit again, like a wave you can't escape. I looked at my phone. No messages. No missed calls. Nothing. That moment right there, it broke something inside me again, because deep down, I was hoping maybe he would text. Maybe he would say sorry. Maybe he would realize. But nothing came. And that's when I faced a truth that most people avoid. Closure doesn't always come from others. Sometimes you have to create it yourself. But I wasn't ready for that yet. I was still stuck between two worlds, the past and the unknown. I started driving without a destination, just moving, because staying still felt too heavy. Every street reminded me of something, a memory, a moment, a version of life that no longer existed. You know what hurts the most? Not losing people, but losing the version of life you thought would last forever. I had imagined growing old with my family, laughing together, sharing moments, feeling needed, feeling valued. But in just one sentence, that entire picture shattered. And now, I was alone, driving through streets that suddenly felt unfamiliar, even though I had lived there for years. That's what emotional pain does. It changes how everything feels. Even the places you once called home. I stopped at a small parking lot, turned off the engine, and just sat there. And for the first time, the tears came differently, not from shock, not from confusion, but from realization. This was real. This was happening, and no one was coming to fix it. Let me ask you something. How many times have you waited for someone to come and fix your pain, to apologize, to understand you, to make things right? And how many times did that actually happen? That's the trap. We wait, we hope, we hold on, while life keeps moving. And in that moment, sitting alone in that car, I realized something powerful. Waiting was only hurting me more. But moving on, that felt impossible. Because moving on doesn't just mean leaving people behind. It means leaving a part of yourself behind too. The part that believed things would work out. The part that held on to hope. The part that kept giving no matter what. And letting go of that, it's not easy. Days started blending together. Morning, night didn't matter anymore. I wasn't living. I was just existing. Eating felt like a task. Sleeping felt like an escape. Thinking felt like torture. And the worst part? I started questioning my own worth. Maybe I really was the problem. Maybe I wasn't a good parent. Maybe I failed. These thoughts, they are dangerous, because once they enter your mind, they start rewriting your story. And if you're not careful, you begin to believe a version of yourself that isn't true. Listen carefully. One person's anger does not define your entire life. One moment does not erase years of effort. One sentence does not decide your worth. But when you're in pain, it feels like it does. I remember walking into a small cafe one afternoon that I hadn't eaten properly in days, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't feel like I deserved to. Yes, pain can do that to you. It can make you feel unworthy of even basic things. I sat there quietly, watching people around me, laughing, talking, living their lives. And I thought, how is the world still normal when my life feels completely broken? But that's the truth. The world doesn't stop for anyone, and no matter how much pain you're in. And that realization, it can either break you or wake you up. That day, something small happened, but it changed everything. The waiter came to my table, smiled and said, "Are you okay?" Simple question, normal tone, nothing special. But I wasn't ready for it, because no one had asked me that in a long time, not genuinely. And I didn't know how to respond. Should I say yes? Should I lie? Should I open up? So I just nodded and said, "I'm fine." But deep inside I wasn't. And for the first time, I admitted that to myself. I'm not okay. And strangely, that felt like a release. Because healing doesn't start when you pretend to be strong. It starts when you accept that you're not. From that moment, something shifted very slightly, but enough. I stopped running from my feelings and started facing them. I allowed myself to feel the pain without judgment, without guilt, without trying to fix it immediately. And that was the beginning of real healing. But don't get it wrong, it wasn't easy. There were still nights I cried, still moments I felt weak, still times I wanted to go back, just to escape the loneliness. Because familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar growth. But deep down, I knew something had to change, because if I kept living like this, I would lose myself completely. And that's when the biggest question hit me. If I don't fight for myself, then who will? That question changed everything. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about anyone else, I was thinking about me. What do I need? What do I deserve? What kind of life do I want now? And I didn't have all the answers, but I had something more important, awareness. And awareness is where transformation begins. So if you're listening to this right now, and you feel lost, broken, confused, I want you to understand something. You are not alone. And more importantly, you are not finished. This phase of your life, it's not the end. It's the turning point. But only if you choose to see it that way. Backhand index pointing right. If you've ever felt this kind of pain, type, "I'm still here" in the comments. Because staying, even when it's hard, is strength. And trust me, what happened next is where everything truly started to change. There was a moment. I almost went back. Not because things were fixed, not because anything had changed, but because the pain of being alone started to feel heavier than the pain I left behind. That's the truth no one tells you about growth. It gets lonely, really lonely. Because when you start choosing yourself, you also start losing the version of life you were used to. The noise, the routine, the people, even if they were hurting you, they were familiar. And familiar pain feels safer than unfamiliar freedom. I remember sitting one evening, staring at my phone and my finger hovering over his name, thinking, maybe I should call. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should just go back and fix everything. And right there, in that moment, a battle started inside me. Not with him, but with myself. One voice said, "Go back. This is your family. You can't live without them." And another voice, quieter but stronger, said, "But what about you?" That question hit differently, because for the first time, someone inside me was finally speaking up. You see, most people don't leave because they're weak. They leave because they've been strong for too long. And going back? It's easy. It's comfortable. It's familiar. But growing? That takes courage. That takes discipline. That takes facing yourself every single day. I put my phone down, took a deep breath, and said something out loud. Not this time. And that moment? It was small. No one saw it, and no one celebrated it. But it was powerful. Because that was the moment I chose myself over my privilege, my habits, my fears. Days turned into a strange kind of routine. But this time, it wasn't about surviving. It was about slowly rebuilding. I started noticing things I never noticed before. The way the morning light felt, the quiet sound of the wind, the peace of sitting alone without pressure. At first, it felt empty, but slowly, that emptiness turned into space. And that space, it gave me room to breathe again. And then something unexpected happened. I started hearing my own thoughts clearly. Not the voices of expectations, not the noise of responsibilities, just me. And do you know what I realized? I had been ignoring myself for years. Ignoring what I felt. Ignoring what I needed. Ignoring what I deserved. I was so busy being everything for everyone else that I forgot how to be anything for myself. So I started small. Very small. I asked myself, what do I enjoy? And honestly, I didn't know. Think about that. Living so long without even knowing what makes you happy. But instead of feeling bad about it, I got curious. I started trying simple things, walking without a destination, listening to music, not for distraction but for connection, sitting in silence without fear. And slowly, piece by piece, I started discovering myself again. Listen carefully, you don't find yourself in big moments. You find yourself in small, consistent choices. One walk. One thought. One decision to not go back. That's how transformation begins. But don't get it wrong. It wasn't all peaceful. There were still hard days, very hard days. Days when memories hit suddenly, days when I missed them so much, it physically hurt. Days when I questioned everything again. Was I too harsh? Did I give up too easily? Should I have stayed and tried more? And those questions, they don't just disappear, they come back, again and again. But this time I handled them differently. Instead of running from them, I sat with them. And I realized something powerful: missing someone does not mean you made the wrong decision. Let that sink in, because many people go back, not because it's right, but because they miss the feeling. But feelings can be misleading. They don't always reflect reality. Just because you feel lonely doesn't mean you should go back to a place where you felt unvalued. Just because you miss someone doesn't mean they treated you right. That realization, it gave me strength. I started writing things down: my thoughts, my feelings, my realizations. And one sentence I wrote changed everything. I deserve peace, even if it means distance. I read that line again and again, especially on the days I felt weak. Because strength is not about never falling, it's about reminding yourself why you stood up in the first place. Slowly I began setting boundaries, not with others, but with myself. No more overthinking at night. No more blaming myself for everything. No more romanticizing the past. And that last one, it's important. Because when we're in pain, we tend to remember only the good parts. We forget the reasons we had to walk away. But I didn't let myself forget. Not to hold anger, but to hold clarity. And that clarity, it became my anchor. Weeks passed, and for the first time I felt something new. Not happiness, not excitement, but stability. And trust me, after chaos, stability feels like peace. I wasn't healed yet, but I wasn't broken the same way anymore. I was becoming stronger, quieter, more aware. And that's when something shifted inside me. Not outside, inside. I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started asking, what is this trying to teach me? That question changes everything. Because suddenly you're not a victim of your story, you become a student of it. And every pain becomes a lesson. Every struggle becomes a stepping stone. Every lonely moment becomes a space for growth. If you're listening to this right now and you feel like you're in that phase, the confusing phase, the lonely phase, the rebuilding phase, I want you to understand something deeply. This is where most people quit. But this is also where the strongest people are built. Don't rush this part, don't escape it, don't numb it. Feel it, learn from it, grow through it. Because what's coming next will only make sense if you don't give up here. Backhand index pointing right. If you're still with me, type "I'm growing" in the comments. Because staying committed to yourself is the biggest win. And trust me, what happened next is where everything truly started to transform in a way I never expected. There was a time I would have done anything to keep everyone happy. Anything. Even if it meant losing myself in the process. Even if it meant staying silent when I was hurting. Even if it meant pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. But something had changed now, not suddenly, not loudly, but deeply. Because after weeks of sitting with myself, feeling everything, facing the truth, I started to see things I never saw before. I wasn't just healing that I was waking up. And when you truly wake up, you can't go back to who you used to be. I remember one morning I woke up, and for the first time my chest didn't feel heavy. There was no immediate wave of sadness and no overwhelming thoughts, just calm. It surprised me because I didn't expect healing to feel like this. I thought it would be dramatic, a big moment, a sudden shift. But it wasn't. It was quiet, soft, almost unnoticeable. And that's when I realized, healing doesn't announce itself. It happens in silence. But here's where things started to get interesting. Because peace at first feels uncomfortable. Yes, uncomfortable. Because when you've lived in chaos for so long, peace feels unfamiliar. Almost suspicious. Your mind starts asking, is this real? Why is everything so quiet? What if something goes wrong again? And without realizing it, you start looking for problems, even when there are none. That's how deeply we get used to pain. I had to learn something new, something most people never learn. How to be okay without chaos. And that required discipline, not motivation, not inspiration, discipline. Because my mind kept trying to pull me back to overthinking, back to guilt, back to old patterns. But this time, I didn't follow. I started creating boundaries, real ones, not just with people but with my thoughts. When my mind said, maybe you were the problem, I answered, I did my best with what I knew. When my mind said, you should go back, I answered, I deserve better than what I left. And slowly I took control. Listen carefully, you don't control what happens to you, but you control what you allow to stay in your mind. That's where your power is. Weeks turned into months, and I started building a new routine, not one based on obligation but one based on intention. I woke up for myself. Not for responsibilities, not for expectations, but for me. I started taking care of myself. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And that shift, it changes everything. Because when you start showing up for yourself, you stop chasing people who don't show up for you. I noticed something else too. I was no longer seeking validation. Not from my son. Not from anyone. And that was new because my whole life I had tied my worth to how others saw me. If they were happy, I felt worthy. If they were upset, I felt like a failure. But now, I was learning to stand on my own. And that's when life tested me again. One afternoon, I got a message. Simple, short, but powerful. Mom, can we talk? My heart stopped for a second. All the emotions rushed back at once. Love, pain, anger, hope. It felt like everything I had built inside me was about to be shaken again. And this is the moment where most people fall back. Because when the past comes knocking, it brings memories. It brings emotions. It brings that familiar pull. And if you're not strong enough, you go back to being who you used to be. But this time, something was different. I didn't rush. I didn't panic. I didn't immediately respond. I paused. And that pause, it was powerful. Because before, I would react instantly out of emotion, out of fear, out of attachment. But now I responded with awareness. I asked myself, am I ready? Am I strong enough to face this without losing myself again? Because healing is not about avoiding people, it's about facing them without losing your peace. I sat with that message for hours, not ignoring it, not running from it, just processing. And I realized something important. I wasn't the same person anymore. I wasn't the one who would tolerate everything. I wasn't the one who would stay silent to keep peace. I wasn't the one who would break just to keep others comfortable. I had changed. And that meant if I went back into that conversation, it had to be different. Not emotional, not reactive, but clear, calm, strong. So when I finally replied, it wasn't from pain. It was from strength. Yes, we can talk. Simple, but powerful. Because behind those words was a new version of me. The version that had learned boundaries, the version that had learned self-respect, the version that had learned her worth. And that's when I understood something deeply. Growth is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before the world taught you to ignore yourself. If you're listening right now and you feel like you're changing, like you're outgrowing old patterns, old relationships, old versions of yourself, I want you to know you're not lost. You're evolving. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable. It will feel lonely. It will feel confusing at times. But that's the price of growth. You can either stay the same and stay comfortable, or you can grow and face the discomfort that comes with it. But here's the truth: everything you want in life is on the other side of that discomfort. So don't run from it, don't avoid it, don't go back to what broke you. Stand your ground, protect your peace, choose yourself again and again. Because what happened next, when we finally had that conversation, changed everything in a way I never expected. Backhand index pointing right. If you're still with me, type "I choose growth" in the comments. Because choosing growth is choosing a better life. And trust me, the next part is where everything comes full circle. When we finally talked, everything slowed down. Not outside, but inside me. I remember holding my phone, staring at the screen, knowing that one conversation could either pull me back into my old life or prove that I had truly changed. My heart was beating fast. My mind was trying to prepare for every possible outcome. What if he blames me again? What if nothing has changed? What if I lose myself all over again? But then I reminded myself of something I had learned through all that pain. I am not the same person anymore. And that one thought grounded me. When we connected, there was silence at first. Not awkward, not heavy, just unfamiliar. Because we were both standing in a space we had never been before. A space where things couldn't be ignored anymore. And then he spoke. "Mom, I didn't understand." Those words, they hit differently, not because they fixed everything, but because they opened a door that had been closed by anger, frustration, and distance. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could go back to being emotional, that I could bring up every pain, every sacrifice, every hurt, that I could try to prove my side. Or I could choose something different, something stronger. I chose peace. I didn't interrupt, I didn't react, I listened, truly listened. And for the first time, I wasn't listening to respond, I was listening to understand. Because growth teaches you something powerful. You don't always need to win the argument. You need to protect your peace. As he spoke, I could hear the confusion in his voice, the regret, the things he didn't know how to express before. And that's when I realized something important. Sometimes people hurt you, not because they don't love you, but because they don't understand you. And sometimes, they don't even understand themselves. But listen carefully, understanding someone does not mean accepting everything. This was the moment where everything I learned, everything I built, everything I healed was being tested. So when it was my turn to speak, I didn't speak from pain, I spoke from clarity. I hear you, but I need you to understand something too. My voice was calm, not weak, not emotional, just steady. I gave everything I had, and somewhere along the way, I lost myself. There was silence again. But this time it wasn't uncomfortable. It was necessary. Because truth needs space to settle. I love you, but I can't go back to being the person I was before. That sentence, it was one of the hardest things I've ever said. Because love makes you want to give, but growth teaches you when to stop. And in that moment I chose growth. We talked for a long time. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but honestly. And that's what mattered. Things didn't magically fix. There was no dramatic ending, no instant happiness, but there was something more important: respect, understanding, space. And sometimes that's enough to begin again. But this time it was different. I didn't go back to my old role, I didn't lose myself in the relationship again, I didn't ignore my needs. I stayed grounded, clear, strong. Because I finally understood something that changed my life forever. You can love people and still choose yourself. You can forgive without forgetting your boundaries. You can reconnect without losing your identity. That balance, it's everything. Months later, my life looked completely different. Not perfect, not problem-free, but peaceful. And peace is something I never truly understood before. Because I used to think peace came from everything being okay around you, but now I know peace comes from being okay within yourself. No matter what's happening outside. I started smiling again, not for others, but genuinely. I started enjoying small moments, feeling present, feeling alive. And most importantly, I started respecting myself. Not because someone else did, but because I finally chose to. And that's the real transformation. It's not about changing your life overnight, it's about changing how you see yourself. Because the moment you see your worth clearly, everything else starts to fall into place. If you're listening to this right now and you're going through something similar, feeling hurt, feeling unappreciated, feeling lost, I want you to hear this deeply. You are not broken, you are not a failure, and you are not alone. You are in a moment of transformation, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. But transformation requires one thing: courage. The courage to walk away when needed, the courage to face yourself, the courage to rebuild, the courage to choose yourself even when it's hard. Because at the end of the day, your life is yours, your peace is yours, your future is yours, and no one has the right to take that away from you. So stand up, even if you feel weak, even if you feel scared, even if you feel lost. Stand up anyway. Take a deep breath and remind yourself, I am stronger than this. I deserve peace. I choose myself. And that choice, it will change everything. Backhand index pointing right. If this story touched your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to hear this, because your one share can be someone else's turning point. And if you want more real stories, real growth, real transformation, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because this channel is not just about motivation, it's about becoming the strongest version of yourself. Remember this: your pain has a purpose, your story has power, and your future is still waiting for you to claim it. Stay strong, stay true, and never forget, the moment you choose yourself is the moment your life truly begins.